Nah.
Or I could just cut it out and just make it so that you make a stupid noise at the beginning.
Which is what you do anyway.
Yes, yes, it is.
You can tell who controls editing, can't you?
Yes, yes, you can. Right. Courses and communities. Obviously, as we briefly mentioned, communication being our word of the day. Week.
We
Yeah.
we don't do daily podcasts.
No,
I
but
think they hear
sometimes
enough
we
of us.
yeah, but sometimes we record like 2 episodes in a week. So it's like,
Mm.
okay. So courses and communities. I'm going to take a little bit of a step back on this one because I say step back. I want to ask you some questions about your experiences because you have a little bit more experience than me with courses.
Yeah, only 15 grand's worth of courses spent. No, you know.
That's not to mention all the unpaid ones. Do you contribute to unpaid ones? I'm actually that's the first question. Do you bother going and doing unpaid courses?
I don't primarily take unpaid courses now. I'm kind of in this period of stepping back from learning new stuff. I've kind of transitioned quite away from the traditional course, take this course, learn this thing, get this action, get this that, get this that. For people who may be new to our world, I'm a bit of a course taker. I like me some courses. I prefer to buy courses as a shortcut to having to do every single bit of research myself because I'm a, you know,
Human.
self-employed father of two, um, who barely has enough time anyway. So saving time to learn things quickly is what I like. However, I have kind of taken a bit of a back step on that. I'm a member of a few communities, but to a certain degree, they're more for customer research and marketing now in community sense for me, as I like building relationships, and the best way to build relationships is in a community. That's where I've got the majority of my work is through helping people inside of communities. They come to me for help. I help them one to one. They end up becoming a long term client. So that's how communities have shown up for me. Courses, I'm finding myself. I think there's a limit to the knowledge that I want to learn about certain things. And I'm finding that what I used to buy were very tactical courses with videos and things like that. But I've now reached a point where it's like, yeah, okay, I know pretty much everything that I want to know. There is always going to be more that I want to know and more things that I can learn, of course, Dunning-Kruger effect, blah, 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 blah. But I am comfortable in my knowledge, and it's just diminishing returns taking yet another course to learn pretty much the same thing with only a slight different perspective. Instead, I'm more interested in more philosophical discussions, which you can't get a course on as easily. Talking about different perspectives on course or on like business. That is where my brain is, which I feel like if we talk about the design of courses just very, 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 very briefly, because up until the last, I think, well, since the C word, since she's come to pass, there was a lot of video courses. Everything was very video focused. There was like live cohorts. There was, weekly calls on Zoom in communities, but I am noticing a huge shift in that where people are moving away from being on a computer and wanting to be able to consume content while not tied to a computer watching a screen. Now, yes, you can watch videos on your phone, and if you use YouTube, you do, but even then, that's just not what people are looking for right now. And there a lot of communities I'm in have kind of quietened down because of this, because it's no longer calls that they want to attend. And I'm a leader in one of the communities, and no one is at the moment. Call attendance is going down because, and this is just a thought, people are fatigued of being on Zoom. People are tired of being there, and I just like, no, I can't deal with this no more. And so the shift for courses in particular is a shifting to an audio only. I won't consume any courses that do not have the audio element. If it has a video element, tough. I won't. I just won't. I won't consume it, which obviously leads to the problem of like tactical courses becoming almost impossible to do audio form, because you need to be able to see the screen if it's tactical and technical with apps and tools and stuff. It needs to be video. I've just myself recently launched a course, and it is audio only apart from one single video, which is a Notion template and how to duplicate it, which is something you just can't do audibly.
So my immediate question, there are lots of different questions from that conversation, but my immediate question then comes in when it comes to audio courses. What are you looking to get from an audio course? Because obviously there's only stuff you can listen to. What is it? Is it because it's a more philosophical, less tactile purpose, like that you want the course to hear the conversation rather than, well, if it's a conversation, it might just be someone talking at you, rather than seeing them? Is it the seeing the face that's the fatiguing part, do you reckon? Or is it what?
I think there is a lot of fatigue of coming on camera, being on the camera, like trying to communicate and be effective communication and all of this lovely stuff. Like there's a lot of fatigue that comes from being on Zoom. It's just being on Zoom or alternative apps like that. What I'm looking to get out of the conversation is a different way of thinking, like sharing different thoughts and how people think. And the reason why I personally developed a course that was audio only was so that people had me as their coach in their ear versus having to sit down at a on a Zoom call or whatever. It was kind of the audio podcast in my instance. The product is Tools and Tech minus the tears, which is about the philosophy and trying to figure out how to find the right apps instead of just like use this, use that, use this, use that. And so that really plays nicely because it's more around, hey, I'm here with you. You've got a workbook you can go through. You don't even need to like even log in to the software beyond getting the podcast on your phone, and that's it. And yeah.
So would you liken it to a course, like a lecture course that's maybe a pre-recorded lecture course or something where you can just download the audios? For example, obviously online, you've got the whole crash course stuff, and a lot of the crash courses from Hank and John and all the other members of the whole complexity group. You could probably just download those as well, because they're on YouTube. You could either like clip them or download them, or if you've got YouTube Premium, obviously, and use the audio from them. Yes, they may reference some things, but is that how you liken your course to it?
Yeah, I think so. I do have a written element as well, which is at the moment just the transcript of the audio because that's all it needs to be. Because it's just asking questions and then like giving the nuance and context around the question, because that's how I work when I coach someone. And so I do liken it to that. Having looked at Crash Course, I think the video element is still really valuable because he does like they do bring up like certain descriptions
Graphics,
and graphics that help to elaborate on that. And I think there is a place for that still, but I think it's also an element of it being self-study.
Mm-hmm.
And computer is the fact that you don't need a computer to to consume it. Like, you could just do it from your phone. You could be listening to the podcast. If someone chooses just to listen to the private podcast, then they can get a lot out of it, and they choose to just think on what the questions were, and they go through there and they do that. They can still gain an awful lot of value just from listening.
What's the difference between an audio course and a podcast? Is it just the structure of conversation?
The difference between an audio course and a podcast, for all intensive purposes, there isn't much difference. It depends on how you develop your podcast. I mean, for us, we just come and have a conversation. With my podcast, I just talk about it. It's a podcast with a little bit of kind of, design in it, where you design the flow of each lesson. It's a little bit less free form. Now, for some people, it will be no different to a podcast, because if you design your podcast in that way, then yeah, it'll be pretty much a podcast. Okay. Except it's kind of more, there's more things to do after each podcast, whereas normally in a typical podcast, it's like a think piece. There's no action steps. The way that I've designed mine is that there is an action step. There's a thing to do next, which is coming from kind of traditional, designing courses and things like that. Whereas a podcast is just like, this is just a conversation. We're just having a conversation, and that's about it.
Yeah, the podcast that springs to mind is Andrew Huberman. So he picks a topic for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, and then speaks quite heavily about it and brings in, I think he calls them protocols, as to how to apply whatever science it is to however you want to apply it. Now, those episodes are extremely long. Like, some of the episodes are like 2-3 hours long. And not everyone can keep track of what's going on. And I would say a traditional course, you have some way to gauge progress, or at least go, okay, I'm at this section, I'll go back to that. Whereas if you've got, like Andrew's got, I think he's got like 70 podcast episodes now of like 2+ hours worth of content. Like, oh, I want to remember that thing. What podcast was it? What minute was it? Very difficult. I would imagine the course would be shorter snippets, so it's easier to locate things.
Yeah, so the way I've designed that, and it still lives within a course platform as well, so that for people who are more visual and like to read and consume, or people who like to consume in multiple different ways at the same time, I'm one of those people, they can read it and listen to it at the same time. And then there is the traditional progress of like, you've done this, you've done that, in the course platform. And then obviously each episode is kind of a section of the course. I haven't totally broken it out into each of the questions. I feel that might be somewhat overwhelming, but I'm still experimenting. It's something that I'm exploring to see and developing it. It'll be interesting to see once it goes on sale fully. I haven't started promoting it yet, outside of my small little community. I haven't promoted it. It'll be interesting to see the reception it gets, because it's an experiment, because it's not typically what a course is delivered as. It is a different way of delivering a course, which I think is, and it's not actually that hard to do. If we get tactical for a minute, if you do have a video course, that is not necessarily, it's not where you have to show things. If you're just showing slides, you don't have to show things. You're just putting something on the screen. Then that can be turned into an audio podcast just by uploading it to a platform and splitting it up. And if you have multiple videos, you can do it that way. It's incredibly easy to do.
So I got a question for you then. When it comes to courses, MOOCs, massive open online courses, memberships, workshops, and all the other words that we can dump into there, because there are so many now. I mean, I was reading a paper about MOOCs, and there's 4 different types/styles of MOOCs, and I was like, right, okay, I thought there was just one, but no, there's 4. There's 4 like officially identified styles. I was like, okay, cool. What do you think they all bring to this landscape of learning? Because obviously we've got online learning, which you have the crash course playlists on YouTube and other people's channels. You could just dive into someone's channel, watch their channel for a while, which is what I do typically when I find a new channel that's any good. I'll watch 2 or 3 of their most popular videos to see what's going on. How do you see courses as different? Because you mentioned that a lot of previous courses were tactile, and that's how I see a lot of courses, because most courses that I see that are either marketed or spoken about, it's this helps me do this thing, it gets me to this stage or whatever, and it seems very much I'm going to go from this person to I'm going to go from that to that person, so they know where they're going. Whereas when we're learning, sometimes we don't know where we're going. So how can you take me to somewhere that I don't know where I'm going, if that makes sense?
Yeah, and I think that it's actually quite a hard. What people are wanting is the tactile, but what they need is the opposite. We're reaching that point where there's only so much learning you can do before you're just out for some people. And I think courses and communities are a shortcut. I could go and research. It's common knowledge that most things that go into courses are pretty well known everywhere. What it is, it's the philosophy of the creator that you're actually interested in, the person who made the course, the designer of the course. And there are so many beautiful and different ways you can present the information, and it's about presenting it in the way that would help your community. My community is a bunch of incredibly busy entrepreneurs who do not have time to sit and read this or watch a that or do a this or do a that. They need to be able to step back and think about things, but they don't want to just sit and watch a 5-minute video with this face on it. And they don't need to. It's not necessary to see that. Having someone in my ear, it's the same thing with just moving slightly away from this. It's like the coaching element. There is an exploration where I'm doing asynchronous coaching, audio only, where it's literally we talk over Voxer, which is kind of like WhatsApp, but without having to hand over your number. And it's amazing because there's a lot more you can get done in just doing it that way instead, because you're not tied down to sitting here. Right now, my full attention is being on this Zoom call. I can't really do other things. It's a social faux pas of doing other things while you're on a Zoom call with someone. You need to be present, you need to be there, you need to be looking at the camera, and you make sure you're communicating clearly, etc., etc., etc.
Smacking your mic.
You know, all of those things. You've got to be able to do them and make sure you're presenting yourself in a clear and proper way, which I feel gets in the way sometimes. Because often when I'm talking to people, they're like, there's a limited amount of time. We have this amount of time, and then that's about it. So I must talk about the really high priority thing, and it's almost this anxiety state. They come into the calls with anxiety because they have a 2-hour slot or a 1-hour slot, and they have to get through all of these things. And there's this, and then there's that, and it's done. There's a high anxiety with it. Whereas I feel with audio coaching, there is that flexibility. It's that I'm sat in the kitchen with my kids playing a game, and someone messages me to talk about something, and there's a discussion going on, and I have that capacity to move around and be more fluid and not be expected to make every single thing a piece of gold. Like every word must completely count all of the time, which is often when you're a newer coach, is how you feel. Like you must feel you give, everything all of the time, which is very fatiguing, very, very fatiguing. Whereas on, tools like Voxer and audio only and audio podcasts, if you think about how much it costs to create videos, it is so expensive, so time consuming. It takes an awful lot of time to create high quality videos.
I was going to
which
say, yeah, add that caveat in
yeah,
there.
to create high quality videos, it takes so much time and tech. Like, you can't see the jumble of cables behind me with this camera set up. You can't see the hours of annoyance I've had trying to. Well, actually, yes, you do know, because this podcast has quite beautifully shown the. Oh, guess what? Video's glitching again. Now I don't even know why. For goodness sake, what's going on now? You know, all of the time that's spent trying to make the camera looks good and make sure my lighting is correct and fixing it when it's wrong and doing this and doing that. There's so much to learn. And for some people, just being able to go, okay, cool, here we go, off we go, let's go. And now with tools like Descript, which honestly I need to create an entire freaking thing on, because so many people are spending 8, 9, 10 hours doing a podcast, and I'm just like, why?
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
yeah. I was talking to a client and they spend nearly 12 hours creating their podcast. And I'm just like,
How
oh,
long is
you
a
poor
podcast
thing.
episode?
It's shorter than what we do, I think you'll find.
My process of doing podcast is record podcast, put podcast into editing software to cut out the beginning and end if need be, and render, publish.
Yeah, but our podcast is very bootstrapped, I suppose. But even if you can create a professional podcast with audio that ducks properly, and you don't have to spend 50, 60 hours, 10 hours like doing that. There are tools like Descript, and you don't have to have technical knowledge anymore. Does it help? Of course. But with tools like Descript, and I will call Descript because that's about the only one that can do everything you need it to do, ranging from recording, transcription, editing, and then adding cool graphics and creating visuals, which is amazing, by the way. Descript wins. It's so quick. I can record an episode in an hour and it's published by the end of the day. Like, it's that easy to do. Yeah, no one does it.
I was gonna say I do the same with my podcast. Oh, something I want to bring in when it comes to video is with video quality. It can be, it's one of those things. Obviously, YouTubers speak about it quite a lot. It's one of those things where you could make a video on your phone for 10 minutes and it do really well, or you could spend loads and loads and loads of hours doing an editing and this, that, and the other, and it do really pants. So finding that balance between like finding a return on investment is very, very difficult. And I think the same can be said for courses, because there are some courses that are extremely well produced, but don't actually have much information. And then you have the other end of things where the person doing the course doesn't have the production tech or the team and the stuff behind them, but the content they're actually sharing is extremely useful. And this is something that has not necessarily plagued, it's certainly biased my opinion towards courses, because what I have experienced is on YouTube and content is the majority of the bigger creators, the more popular creators, the ones that have the tech and the team behind them, have very generalized videos and generalized information. And when you're looking for something really nuanced or deep or really specific in a context, you want to look at those small creators. They've got like 2,000 subs, videos got like 400 views, but the content is so rich in information. And when I look at a lot of the courses and the outlines of courses, of modules and stuff, I'm like, I see this everywhere. Why would I want to buy a course that has like someone, yes, the live stream or the podcast or the talk or whatever is like really crappy graphics. It looks awful. It probably sounds quite dodgy as well. It's like a 50-minute conversation, but that 50-minute presentation, this person has done in a lecture hall that looks grubby, has the same amount of information as this really high produced, well done, well documented course. Like, why would I pick the course over the video? And that's something that I have to struggle with sometimes, especially when finding that stuff.
I think it comes from a perspective of return on investment. Like, you have time.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you, in particular, from your specific context, you have as much time as you need. Whereas for a lot of business owners, we don't in the same way. Now, yes, we can create time, but there is only so much time that you have. You have clients to answer to, depending on how many clients you have to answer to, depends on how much you need to earn, etc., etc. Sometimes spending $97 on a course is just like, oh, yes, you know. And then you have these massive courses. I mean, going on the realms of big, massive creators and creating courses, often they're crap.
Yeah, I can't say that because I've never been on one of the courses, but what I will say is a lot of the courses that I have seen that I'm interested in, I have no intention of taking because a lot of the content they talk about on the course and a lot of the reviews that people say about the course are information that they share on their blog or in their videos
And
or
that's
in
the
the
thing.
comments. I'm
I
like,
also think there's a slight point of contention on that, which I actually wrestle with as a business owner of like, you could probably figure everything out I say on my website. I barely hold anything back, because I don't want to, because it's fascinating. And so yeah, you could learn everything about, or you can take one-to-one stuff with me. I think for me, my development of courses is to provide an entry point. If we shift from like the creator to the marketing standpoint, my courses, my things that I sell, digital products, courses, etc., are a way into my world more than I'm going to teach you the world, if that makes sense. I teach a lot. I share a lot in in my courses. They are rich, they are deep, they are great, but also they're designed to get you into a bigger world. And that's how I market them. They're like, here, learn all of this. Come join me for this. And people want bite-sized pieces now. They don't want big, or I'm noticing a shift into less 3 hour long Zoom calls to like 32-minute podcast episodes that they can just consume on their own easily.
Something you mentioned earlier, which I thought was interesting, is you said that a lot of people are taking the course because of the creator of the course to get their philosophical perspective on whatever it is that they're talking about. And this is where I think the community aspect, I think, should play a bigger role in the courses. I don't know what role they play in a lot of courses, but when I look at some of the bigger platforms like Coursera and some of the other platforms that literally just say, here's a load of videos, there you go. I don't think that's important anymore because you could literally just Google it.
No.
Anything.
I think really the importance with courses and any content, like a course is just pieces of content. Let's be real.
Mhm.
That's all they are.
Functionalist approach right there.
Yeah, a little bit. But I think it's the community that is the important thing, and I think sometimes that's lost. And there are multiple ways to do it. You can have a specific community for the specific course, which if you like creating courses and developing things, and yay, that's nice. But if you're not someone who can do that or who wants to do that, something as simple as just like a Facebook group, which entrepreneurs seem to really still like Facebook. Don't ask me why. So inefficient. Yeah, but the thing is, it's in the sight of mind of people. They see it, they know it's there, so they'll reply. I'm no better. I hate the fact that
if I am in a Facebook group, I am not responding unless I get like 3 or 4 notifications, because if I get spammed with notifications from Facebook, because that's the way Facebook works with notifications, I don't look at that stuff. When I do eventually open the app, I click on notifications, it opens them all up, I don't look at any of them, and then I close it down just to get rid of the number.
yeah. And Facebook it's just a Facebook group. That's what I have now. I have a community, a client and student community group on Facebook because it's easy. It works. People are there. If they have questions, they come in and ask them. If they don't, then they don't have to. It's like, it's optional. And I think having that community aspect, I mean, for me, I've been thinking a lot about communities in my business, and often the conversation is around taking someone somewhere. And that's what the common business view is.
Do
That
you mean
a
like literally or
community,
physical? Do you mean like
like,
literally like taking them to a different app, or are you talking like taking
no,
them
it's like
spiritually somewhere?
taking them somewhere. It's like giving them an end goal, like you're talking about courses and community.
Right.
And I'm not sure I totally agree. I have
I
absolutely no evidence for this. because I'm looking at you and us, like our community, like the Notion Nerds community, and also your one that you just developed. You're just having a conversation, for goodness sake. That's all it is. And I feel that maybe from a business perspective, we're missing that. Like from businesses, we're missing that. I mean, I am on Discord and member of hundreds of like little communities, little Discord communities. You know, I watch Cities Skylines walkthroughs and playthroughs. I love that game. I play it myself, and there are YouTube communities where you can just go in, ask questions, have conversations, and it's easy and it's not so freaking so much effort. It's just having conversations.
So something I want to add here is I feel like with courses, this is the perception I've gained from listening to people's reviews of courses. It's one of those things. I like listening to people's reviews of courses to see what they've got from the course, and most of the time they don't say anything useful, but they do bring up that, oh, there was this community, or there was this group, or there was this forum, and 9 times out of 10, a very low percentage contribute to the conversations. And when the people are contributing to the conversations, they get 1 or 2 like good friendships in that community. Then once the community's done, they stick with that person. Like they find a person they relate to or relate with, or they sort of like have an affinity with, and it's just that one person they speak to rather than the group. And something that seems to be underlying a lot of these reviews, a lot of these conversations and opinions, is they feel like they need to be part of the community because it's something they should do, not because they want to. It's just, I should contribute something, somehow, some way, where you don't need to. And I don't think it's the creators saying you need to do this. I think it's an expectation we put on ourselves, saying there's a community, I need to be active in it, or no, I'm not going to be active in it at all. And it brings up this expectation of, okay, do I have to? Don't I have to? What can I put in there? What can't I put in there? And this links with a lot of learning science, coaching science. So I'm just going to say one main topic here, which is psychological safety. And in whatever coaching group, coaching term, environment, whatever it is, psychological safety needs to be there. And I think in a lot of course communities, there isn't that element of safety because either the moderators aren't there, or there's no one really looking over it. Most communities are really nice and friendly, but you don't know until you're in it or you're reading it.
Yeah. And also I think, not quite sure whether this relates directly, but I feel it does. So I'm going to just say it anyway, and you can correct me. Like, I think there's also an element of, if we get a really tactical at the moment, is like the platform is incredibly important. I am in a number of different communities, and although I have paid an awful lot of money to be in that community, I will not access it because the platform it's on doesn't feel right for me. And so when you're trying to choose a course platform or a solution or a thing as a business owner, you need to get really, really, really fucking clear on what your students need, what your like community members need, what they need. Because that's really, really important and integral to the experience. And I think it does link to that psychological safety of like, this feels like a place I can be in. I feel good here. I feel safe here.
So it's not quite psychological safety. It comes involved, but it's more about motivational climate. Having an environment that has been built that you are motivated to be involved in, to join. Motivational climate is another like concept in philosophy and psychology. So loads of stuff. But the thing that I would say there is, if it's on a platform that is new to someone, it's something else they need to add to their to-do list. I need to go and check that thing, rather than just going on the apps they're already going on and then just clicking somewhere else. Discord is an example, WhatsApp is an example, Facebook, as you mentioned, is an example. People are already on those things. They don't need to go, oh yeah, I need to go check insert course forum thing here. Like I don't want to do that, which is why a lot of the forums that I see are on the course platforms, or on the where the videos are, or whatever it is. I don't want to have to go there to ask a question or to be engaging in a conversation. I want to be on platforms that are built for conversation, like Discord, WhatsApp, Facebook.
Just remind me what that word was, because it's just about to go into my current researchers area. Psychological safety, the other one.
Motivational climate.
Thank you. I'm gonna go have fun with that in a minute.
Trust me, you will end up diving down big rabbit holes.
Good. That's my weekend. Thank you.
A week. Like I could do.
Oh, okay. Cool. Yay.
Like,
because at the moment that's where my brain is thinking of community and development and all of that stuff, because it's something I think we touched on this in the bonus episode, which I don't even know whether it's live yet, of around the direction that I'm taking my business and some form of that, and a community is probably going to be part of it because of the conversations I'm having in the book. There are no answers, and it's a journey that has no end, whereas Notion builds are just Notion builds. I build your Notion and say ta-ta, and I coach you, and then when you're ready, you'll go. I feel that the book.
I so wish you'd watched my video now, because the systems theory that Luhmann talks about. So the video I'm referencing, for those that are listening at some point, that obviously it's after the week that I published it. So it's the one with Nicholas Luhmann on the thumbnail, but essentially it's looking at Zettelkasten from an approach from systems theory. So Zettelkasten is a method to take notes, but systems theory is the theory that is fundamental to that note-taking system. But systems theory suggests there is no one way to organize things, and there are multiple ways to organize things to get to the same result. And that's just systems theory in general. And then you can expand that to complexity theory. And I think it's the same with the communications and the conversations, because each community, according to systems theory, is a system. It is a group of parts being people, and then inside people, obviously there are systems inside that and systems inside that, etc. But there is a group of parts, i.e. people, with a collective outcome in some way, but everyone is going to get there in different ways, which means they're going to take different courses, they're going to do different things, they're going to have different prior experience, they're going to have different goals, different environments that they are in individually alongside the environment they are in together, because again, multiple systems. And there is a lot to this, which is why I did a video about it. But I think the community itself is a system, and in order to maintain a system, the environment, the motivational climate needs to help the system, not hinder the system, and the people involved in it, i.e. the parts in it, need to be evolving, not staying stagnant. Because if a part stays stagnant, then it goes back into the environment once it's came. So people need to be involved. Yeah, people need to be involved in the conversation. If they're not involved in the conversation, they're no longer part of the system, community. And then they just disappear. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time, because people, for whatever reason, there could be loads of reasons, don't engage in the community, the system, the forum, and then they disappear again. And then they don't really get much from it. So how do we, as course creators and people involved in the courses, do anything about it?
I'm going to poke you there. I don't agree that they don't get... Just because someone is quiet and does not engage in the system doesn't mean they're not getting something from it.
They're different things. Quiet and engagement are different things. Because you could be
I wanted to get that I just wanted to make sure that was said, because there's a whole thing on lurkers and how bad they are and turning lurkers into non-lurkers, and I don't believe that's actually a really good idea. I think it's a shit idea, but that's a whole nother... I hate the idea that lurkers have to be forced to be active. Don't force me to be active. If I am happy in the space I'm in, leave me the fuck alone.
Yes. So when I say active, like I said, the video explains it, which is probably an assumption I shouldn't have made. But when I say active, I mean actively engaging in the communication. So whether that is you perceiving whatever it is in the community and you doing something about it, that's the communication between the parts. So you don't have to actively contribute something. It's just you taking something and using it to in your own system. So lurkers, most people do lurk because they prefer it. And as long as they're engaged engaging, i.e. using the things that they're lurking and seeing, then it's beneficial. If they're not, and they just go in, like me on Facebook, if they just go in, click, 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 and leave, that's not engaging with anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm just going on it to tick a box. And I feel like some people do that. They go in and have a look around because they feel they should and then leave. That's not engaging in my view, and according to systems theory, because you don't have to. Yeah, but thank you for bringing it up, because that's an assumption people could have made.
Yeah, and we have I've included, or will include, a link to that video in the show notes.
Cool.
Because I do those things.
Cool. Yeah, because the video can be quite high in cognitive load, so you may need to slow it down. I did see someone say they need to slow it down. I tried speaking slower, but I think because I used more complex words, it didn't really matter. So even though I slowed down my speaking, I think because the depth of the conversation increased as my speed of speaking slowed down, so the cognitive load's still relatively similar. So people are still watching me at 0.5. I think I had someone comment say they watch every video at 2x2 speed, but when they watch me, they watch it at 0.5. And I was like, that's a big difference.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big.
Because you talk at 2x speed. That's the truth of it.
I can't help that everyone else speaks so slowly.
I know. I know.
I don't speak quick. Everyone else speaks slow. The entire world is just different from me. Hopefully you understand the sarcasm in that, people listening.
Yeah, because that would have sounded so... Context. He was being sarcastic. And now I'm going to take it out of context and share it everywhere and say that you're like an egotistical maniac.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Well,
what?
I make you sound like an idiot.
You start most episodes with me sounding like a moron. So, you must
giggle though. When you listen to the first bit, you're like, where's he started at this time?
Yeah, I do. I'm just like, oh, great. What noise am I making at the beginning this time? Because that's often the case. If either one of us had more time, we should just do a hypercut of noises.
The thing is, it's become like, because like most podcasts have the 2 or 3 minute ad bit at the beginning or whatever, and you sort of just expect it and you skip the bit. Well, it's become like the intro to the Notion Nerds. What random noise is John gonna make? Just like you've joined the Notion Nerds podcast when you hear a random noise at the start of the episode.
Yeah, pretty much. That's our ident.
Part of our identity. Yep.
Yeah.
Sarcastic British nerds. Is that the thing? Something like that.
Probably. I don't know anymore. Like let's be real. The way we describe this podcast is not even true anymore. We're the Notion Nerds. Yeah, not really.
Wind turbines. Moving on.
Oh yeah, you picked. Yeah, turbines.
Trust me, I wanted to throw something out the window. Right, let's have a look at communication. behind the scenes giggling, yes. Okay, so communication. I have 5 words. Now, I know this is meaning of words, but I think because there's no direction of this word, it was quite difficult to conjure up a good summary or meaning of what it of what it means to be communication, because communication isn't a thing, it's something you do. So I've got 5 words I think will trigger a conversation. That's how I approach this.
Cool.
Did you do something similar?
No.
Okay.
I found this one really hard, actually, because it was very, I had a main point, and then it kind of all descended from the main point.
See, but that's how you do this. You literally just have a main point and then go, oh yeah, my other 3 or 4 points, basically the same thing. You just talk for a while and then agree with my points.
Yeah.
Well, what's it's the dog, the nodding dog? I can't remember. Churchill. That's the one. That's the
Oh
one.
yes. Don't remind people about the notion nerds nodding toys, please.
You've just done that. I didn't need
Oops.
to.
Yeah.
Cut that
Cheers.
out. Nah, I can't be asked. Right, what's your first word?
Cut that out. Nah, I can't be asked. So it was sharing your ideas and thoughts with another.
I would probably whittle that down to sharing because I think
I
it's
actually
more
did.
than
Yeah. Sharing.
sharing is caring. Okay.
Not always.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a reason why it wouldn't be. I mean, there can certainly be negatives about it, but it still doesn't mean you're not caring. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure. I need to find an argument to make me wrong. That's literally what I do when I come up with an idea. I'm like, how am I wrong? Why am I wrong? Where am I wrong? And if I can't come up with something, then I Google it and try and find a way that I'm wrong. And most of the time, I don't find a way I'm wrong. I find a different perspective of my thinking. So, but yeah, that's an interesting one. I may have to have a look at that. I know the saying. It's just I had never approached it from that perspective before. Anyway, yeah. So sharing is that just?
Yeah, kind of. As I do often, I have a bit of an etymology boogie because I love looking at the meaning of the words. And so it's like it was really interesting where it came from. A lot of it came, if we're going Latin, it was like to share, divide out, communicate, impart, inform, join, unite. The one that catches me right now, which I wish I caught earlier, is to make common, which is like, huh, that's interesting.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's actually one of my points.
Yeah.
It's my third point though. Yeah, make common. So what I'm going to skip the first 2 points because we're on this one. I have complexity as a word, and I've expanded complexity by, well, two things. Either complexity by decreasing complexity by making it common, or increasing complexity in order to be more specific and deep with the communication. So my approach to this was communication can be of two ends. You can either be communicating things that are plain language that are easily understandable, typically are shallow depth, or at least have the similar depth of understanding to the person you're communicating to or with. Then you've got the other end of things, academics, using loads of complex terminology that's really specific and nuanced into the topic that no one understands apart from them. Is it useful? Yes, for them, furthering moving forwards. Is it useful for most people? No, because it's not common knowledge. The Flynn effect, I think, is a good effect to bring in here. For those unfamiliar with the Flynn effect, essentially every 10 years we increase in 3 points of IQ. That yes, there's loads of research behind it, loads of other science behind it, but that's in a nutshell what it is. And I think the Flynn effect is because of our ability to communicate. The communication like online has drastically increased this. There is no increase in the Flynn effect from prior years to now, but that's because previous years and measuring IQ is very difficult. You couldn't exactly go on the internet and be like, hey, can you do an IQ test for me? But I would guess because of common knowledge, communication, IQ as a general baseline will increase more because of the internet and the rest of it. Does that mean everyone's going to be really, really smart? No. It just means the baseline is going to increase. And I think that's because of communication and common knowledge. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, and communication is an interesting one. If I take a business spin on this one, because
business person,
communication is also marketing as a form of communication, but if you are even minutely ethical, you hate marketing because you're not a psychopath. And yet we're taught to basically manipulate and shove things down other people's throats and force pain points and things like that. That's not communication, that's manipulation. And I don't think my current perception believes that communication and manipulation are not the same.
I see it as kind of like a tree, a subsection, because in order for someone else to perceive something, there needs to be something received, which by definition is communication, something going from one to another. I see manipulation as a way of manipulating the information shared so that the perception of the information is received in a different way to maybe they intended, or maybe the person sharing the communication manipulated it in a way that the perception was changed. That's how I see it.
Ooh.
So like communication is the tunnel and manipulation is making it smaller or bigger or any direction. Just a bit of a visual for people listening.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's pretty, yeah.
Right. Yeah. There was a point that was brought up there that made me think of something that, oh yeah, I'm just going to say it anyway. So I was going to wait till I got to that point, but there are parts of communication that we don't acknowledge are parts of communication. So an example of this, so I've got tonality as my first word, but tonality doesn't always have to be the emphasis you put on words. It can also be tonality in body language. And a perfect example of this is when you turn to look at someone. If you turn to look at someone really slowly, there is a tone you're giving to that action. Or if you stare at someone like John is doing right now, there is a tone to that action. It's communication. He's not saying anything. There is a tone to the action, and communication has a tone. Everyone has a natural resonance of tone communication that we have when we're enjoying something. Typically, we're faster. We're more explicit with the words we use. Typically we have highs and lows, and the speed increases and volume normally gets increased because we're interested. And then when we're not interested, it can be slowed down and really dull and boring. And some people speak like this anyway, and it just drives me mad. But the tonality changes. And I think that manipulates, to use the word a second ago, I think that manipulates the way the communication changes. So that big tunnel could have, I don't know, trees in the middle of it. So some parts can't go through. In my head, I had like a car driving through a tunnel, and if you've got a tree in it, the car's got to go on a different road, like up around the side. Yeah.
A tree in the tunnel.
Yeah, I've got like
right.
a big...
I don't even know how that is possible. A tree.
Who's talking about? We're making metaphors here. It doesn't have to be possible. You put an island at the bottom of the sea. By definition, an island isn't at the bottom of the sea. So shut up.
Yeah, I might be at fault to not bring you up on it, considering you ran that one home.
But yeah, so that's how I see it. Like communication as a big tunnel, and then things being dumped in the way. So yeah, that's two of my words. What are your thoughts on tonality of verbal?
I think if we go even further, we also have that our body communicates without us, if you believe the philosophy. I'm trying so hard not to dive too deep into this one, otherwise you and I would have gone one hell of a tangent.
I was gonna say, okay, which element of cognition are we looking at now, Jonathan?
All of them. But our body, like body language, is a form of communication that is so key, and also just our body itself communicates, if you believe that train of thought, which I kind of do. But we'll just leave that one there, because otherwise we will never leave this conversation.
Go back and listen to our previous episode on extended cognition.
And also my episode where I just lightly touch on it in my podcast, of like a more specific example of that.
If you're going to plug yours, I'll plug mine, because one of my episodes was about extended cognition, but I go like really, really deep.
So basically, if you want to go even deeper than just us two talking, go to Danny. If you want to just have a more tactical, I don't know whether tactical is the right word, but more like, here's how you can do it in your productivity, watch mine. Or if you want to do both, do both.
And I planned on making a video, so a video hopefully will summarize the majority, but that's not out yet. So yeah, I think when it comes to the communication elements of embodied cognition, i.e., inside the body, there are lots and lots and lots of things to say that we have, I think, covered throughout, like the perception metaphor. The other cognitions will leave you to explore, but I think embodied cognition is probably the best one here.
Yeah,
with relation
that's
to...
what I. Yeah. I think that I find it really fascinating, and body language is always incredibly fascinating. And then you have embodied cognition on top of that, and you're just like, oh, this is yummy. This is juicy.
Yes. What is your next word? I've said two. I think you've only done your top one.
I don't like any of them.
I'm just rattle them off and then see if anything.
Yeah, so it's like communication can come with some unwritten rules that some ignore or do not understand. There is idea spreading. That sounds interesting. A creative practice of developing and creating new ideas. When you're communicating with people, you can develop your ideas. You can create new ideas just through communication, because you each bring different perspectives, which develops a new thing.
I was going to say this is a perfect example, because you're communicating something to me and you're developing your thoughts and ideas around it, and then you go and finish it with a really technical term. Thing.
With the hand motions, come on.
Oh yeah, we've got jellyfish on screen. Wait, is it a jellyfish? Was it a tube? Or what
no idea.
I will make hand motions and gestures to help you try and understand what I'm saying, but what I'm doing doesn't really match what I'm saying, so it may just confuse you and actually be extraneous load. And now he's doing the worm.
Sorry, audio people.
Yeah, now he's doing the worm on camera with his hands, not his body. He didn't get off his chair and do the worm on the floor.
Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
I don't see John as someone that would just get down and break dance. That's not the perception I have.
No.
Okay. I did dance at school. That's a really side tangent, but I did dance as a GCSE at school. Did you get an A?
Not a GCSE. No, not a GCSE.
I got an A for contemporary dance because I can point my toes. That was literally it. It's literally it.
All you know what? We need to just create. We just need to create a Twitter that's just Notion nerds out of context.
I
got an A because I can point my toes.
So yeah, this is what communication should be about. It should be about fun, enjoying things, which I think this is. So my next point is medium of communication. And this is where I think the whole spaces and talking with people thing. What was the first app? Clubhouse? Is that the word? Is that the one? Clubhouse started the Twitter Spaces thingy.
Yeah.
And I think it was that, because Clubhouse was on iPhone, and then it went to Android eventually, and it was just the audio group app thing.
Clubhouse. Yes,
it was that. Okay. Yeah. So I think that brought a new, not necessarily new, because you could do it on Discord anyway, but a different perspective of medium of communication, because obviously now we have Twitter Spaces, and I'm sure it's on Facebook and Snapchat or something somewhere, somehow. I don't know.
On Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. Well, sorry, Meta, or is it still Facebook? I don't know.
I don't bloody know anymore.
Yeah, but I think medium of communication, because spoken communication allows for tonality and allows for all of the different elements of voice to come into the communication. I think it brings in another dimension. What are you oohing about?
Yeah, it adds communication. Can add another layer of context, especially verbal communication. Can add context that is not normally seen in other forms, which is why personally I prefer audio and video versus written, because I think you're the same as me, because you can get the additional context from audio and video as well. Video is visual context, but audio is, there's so much you can add. There's more nuance with video and audio.
So
it's possible.
there is a sentence I have in my Obsidian that's actually part of I think it's part of the cognitive psychology page, but basically it's a sentence. She stole the money. And if you emphasize a different word in the sentence, it completely changes what the sentence means. Because she stole the money. She stole the money. Like you emphasize different words. Whereas when you read
the money.
Exactly.
She stole the money.
Exactly. Yeah. So and text, you don't get the emphasis. You don't get the sarcasm potentially. I know someone that likes using sarcasm sometimes when I respond on YouTube or anywhere online. Yeah. When I respond to someone online or leave a message, they don't get my sarcasm because they don't know me for whatever reason. Probably because they don't care. And then they respond really sassy. And I'm like, oh, you didn't understand the sarcasm. My bad. I'm going to have to explain myself now. And when you explain sarcasm, it's no longer fun. so and I think with courses, yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, okay, you didn't understand. And I think with courses and forums and mediums, because there's a lack of, I'm going to say it as well, like authenticity sometimes to the words, because I think we type differently to the way we speak. I know some people try and use bigger words, like in academics anyway. I'm going to use a big word to make myself sound smart, but I don't actually know what the big word means.
I have actually been criticized by someone who joined my email list for, and their critique was very clearly, it basically looks like you just write what you thought out loud and just sent it. I'm like, thank you, because that's exactly what I freaking did. I write how I speak because that's communication.
Yep, it's a medium of communication. Yeah, and I think when it comes to the whole Zoom call conversation that you spoke about earlier, I think spaces or equivalent of spaces, whether that's a Discord, what's the word, voice channel, or a Twitter space, or whatever it is in whatever community, I think they are useful because anyone can hop in, hop out. Obviously, you're not on video because it's audio anyway, but you can hop in and hop out. And then you can have those conversations because you can just join a voice channel. I'm talking Discord now because it's a platform I'm familiar with. But if you want to have a conversation about something, you can just, let's hop in that voice channel because you can obviously be in the conversation in the text chat and be like, I want to talk about this. And then you just join the voice channel, talk about it for however long, and then leave the voice channel again. And I think that is a better way to go over a conversation, especially when someone is there. And in communities, instead of having a Zoom call with 100 people, 1,000 people, and everyone's like turning their cameras off and trying to hide, you could just have a Discord conversation with everyone hopping in and hopping out when you want. Yes, there's limitations on recording the information, but how many people are actually going to listen to a 2-hour conversation anyway? They're probably just like, from my experience, most of the time they want the highlight points. They don't want to have to read the whole thing again. From my experience anyway. Obviously, there's going to be differences, but that's how the medium of communication I see can be used. I see John frantically faffing around on his computer.
Yeah, my brain's just gone, oh, that's interesting. Like, there's me putting audio into the course themselves, but what if the membership platform was focused on audio, where there are audio rooms? Now, Discord would fit best for this, but if I'm not mistaken, I'm going to go play with this in a minute, my own community in Facebook, there is audio rooms, and my brain's just gone like, what if there were audio rooms based on questions that you have asked, that you've got questions with? And that's really fascinating.
Because instead of getting a one-dimensional answer to a question, you can
Yeah.
get into a very quick conversation. And if anyone that's lurking wants to listen into that conversation, they can. They don't have to join the voice call or whatever. They just listen in, which is obviously what Spaces is on Twitter. It's literally 5 to 10 people talking about something. Normally, it's like 3 or 4 presenters. They talk about something, and you get like hundreds of people just sitting there listening because they want to listen to the conversation. That's what Spaces is on Twitter. And Twitter is a massive platform. If you have a specific community and you talk about those things, if you suddenly hop into the community, you realize, oh, there's a space or a conversation going on. What's that conversation about? You hop in. Oh, this sounds like an interesting conversation. I'm going to listen in. Or no, this is boring. I'm going to jump out, rather than having to read through tons of shit.
So here's some tactical stuff for business owners. If you're listening, there is a set in Facebook. If you have a Facebook community or Facebook page, there are rooms, real-time connections, and the many ways that help your group keep in touch and foster belonging. As an admin, you have the power to control each item in the set. You could create rooms. People create broadcasts and live videos and stuff and schedule events and stuff, but rooms, that's pretty powerful for Discord users. It's basically a voice channel. That is quite interesting. So my reaction to that is that would be fantastic, and I'm basically going to go and play with that later.
I have 2 more points, which we've sort of covered.
Yep.
One of them is purpose. Like, what's the purpose of communication? Which obviously we've covered a little bit when it comes to the lurking and the marketing and the different directions that we can take the communication in. And I briefly mentioned cognitive load theory and extraneous load, but I think that is a big point to bring in when it comes to communication, because you can communicate things in so many different ways. And a lot of the information, a lot of the time, is redundant and you don't need it. So it's actually extraneous load, i.e. load that isn't helpful. So how do we communicate in a way that's helpful? Obviously, when we're speaking, we're mumbling over words. So we could say that it's unhelpful, but when you're listening live to a conversation, it's actually more helpful to know, actually, they've taken a break to think about that. They've thought about this answer, or they're mumbling, so they're not entirely sure what they're talking about. Whereas when you're reviewing
Context.
Exactly. Whereas when you're reviewing it, you don't want to hear all the mumbles, you just want to get the highlights. That's from my experience anyway. And I think the purpose of communication and building in that context to the load that you're getting from it changes. Obviously, you've gone audio only. If you've got video as well, the video could be redundant. If it's not redundant, obviously it's useful, which means that medium of communication has a purpose to it, bringing 2 of my points. So yeah, that's my thought on purpose. Would you? I see you nodding.
Yeah, I agree. I think purpose and intention is always a thing that people need to consider, but don't.
Yes, it's funny. One of the things that irritates me a little bit about some of the content that I consume online is YouTube is the main platform, main culprit for this. The purpose of communication. They make a video, and I understand there is a formula for YouTube videos, and you put music in the background. I put music in the background. I don't like music in the background. I tried it because it's the YouTube thing. Can't stand it. I will put sound effects in here and there to emphasize something, but music in the background a lot of the time is either too loud, too quiet, or it's just irritating in the background. Listening at times 2 speed, the music doesn't make sense anyway. But something else is when sound effects and things come in, or other elements of, I don't want to say mistakes, but other elements of like visual cues or audio cues alongside whatever the point they're trying to make is. I'm like, that didn't make sense. Like, why are you showing me this footage? Why are you doing these sound effects? There's no cohesiveness, even with the best storytellers on the platform. Like, most of the video is just them talking at the camera. You look at Peter McKinnon. Yes, he's got loads of really cool B-roll and loads of really cool sound effects, and it's really well produced. But most of his videos are literally just him talking at a camera. But that's all it is. And I feel like some people try to overdo the production of things, which hinders communication.
Yeah, and but YouTube is the meta of communication on YouTube is weird.
Mm. And that's where I
Like,
linked it to purpose.
and I think that is quite. There is a weird thing with YouTube. It's like I saw a tweet thread recently about Mr. Beast and how you should be bringing that into all of your content. And I'm like, no, 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 no.
Even
Mr.
Mr. Beast
Beast
says
doesn't
no.
need, yeah, yeah.
Even he says no.
I don't think fast-paced videos with dramatic thumbnails and shit is helpful for anyone.
The thumbnails, yes, I agree. The titles, yes, I agree. The content, no, because of the purpose of the content. What Jimmy has said multiple times is if you want loads of views and you want loads of audience retention, you want to get a big channel, you need to appeal to the masses. And the masses, majority of time on YouTube, are there for entertainment. So they want the big explosions in their faces. That's why Hollywood makes loads of films with explosions. There is almost no sense to the film. There's no logic in the film. It's just there's sex, drugs, and explosions and guns and cars. But that's literally Hollywood. And that's basically what Mr. Beast does in his videos. He brings up a really interesting topic, makes loads of explosions, really fast cuts, and just explodes your screen for however long the video is. And you're like, cool, I learned nothing, but I'm distracted for however long the video is. I'm happy. If that's not the purpose of your video, don't do it because all it's going to do is drive your viewers insane. If I was to put fast cuts and explosions in my videos, people would be even more confused than they already are.
Fireman technique is rubbish.
Oh, yeah, that's how I feel inside. Just every couple of seconds, add an explosion just because it's YouTube. Explosion. But yeah, so and I think that it's sometimes there's overproduction. I'm going to call him out a little bit because I know that he's open-minded enough to like take the critique if he listens. But David Perel, he's a writer. He's a very good writer. He's got a course, but his videos for me are far too overproduced. Like it flips through screens and B-roll and audio and stuff way too quick. I'm like, what, where, how, why? I'm confused. I think Anna, I can't say her last name, does something similar where she speaks about a really interesting topic, and most of the topics she speaks about, I have done a lot of research in because she speaks about learning with kids. So a lot of the information she shares is quite shallow for my personal preference. But when I'm consuming the content, I'm like, I understand this very well, but all the stuff you're blasting at me, like blasting at the screen to me, I'm like, wait, what are you talking about again? And I understand what she's talking about. So I can't imagine what other people are experiencing when they're trying to read the same content. And Tiago Forte, again, like these people are in the same sort of niche. Writing, amazing. But when it comes to videos, I feel like they overdo it from my perspective anyway. And Tiago Forte's video with Thomas Frank, the background music, I was struggling to hear what Thomas was saying because of the background music. Yes, they faded it out and brought it in. Maybe there was a professional editor. I don't know. But the background music was hindering my ability to actually hear the conversation. And I wanted to hear the conversation. And all the B-roll and stuff that they dumped in there, I couldn't see Thomas's facial expressions when he was explaining something. And that's what I wanted to see. I wanted to see how he was reacting to the question, because I wanted to see, like, I wanted to get a perception of how he perceived the question, whether like, oh, that's a good question, or oh no, I don't like that question, or I don't really know how to answer that question. But I couldn't see his face because there was B-roll on it. And that's something that I wanted to see in the video, which I didn't get. I don't know whether you can relate to this, but that's how I get from some of those videos with all the stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier. A number of people that are in this space who are very good writers are overproducing their videos, and it shows. It just feels, I hate authenticity. I hate that word, but it feels inauthentic. Like I want to hear and see them. I don't care about flashy shit. I'm here to learn. If I want flashy stuff, I will just go watch Mr. Beast because he's the best at it.
I mean, if you want to be the best at it, then yeah, learn how to do the flashy stuff. But I think, like we were saying earlier, if you have an audience, well, for me anyway, if you are looking for someone to answer a question, you don't look for the big creators because they're too general, because they're talking to a mass audience. If you want something useful and specific, most of the time you want to look at the smaller creators. Now, where I think there is a nice balance is when you have a creator. From my experience, most of the creators either have PhDs or have been in higher academics, and they have learned how to create content for the masses, in that they know how to make content, but they also know far more than a lot of people about the topic they're talking about. So they can go into the depths in all of the nuances because they have expertise in that area. Veritasium is a perfect example. When you look back at his videos, they were awful when it comes to production and mass marketing and the rest of it, but he knew his stuff. And he still knows his stuff, but he now packages the video for anyone to be able to understand it and receive it, which I'm in a journey learning how to do that. Smarter Every Day is another example. A lot of those types of sciencey channels, they know their stuff, but they're trying to explain to a mass audience. Tom Nicholas is someone that I've been watching for a while now, since he did the Veritasium video. I say watching for a while, it feels like a while, but I've watched a lot of his past videos. And his trajectory is very similar to Veritasium and what it was, and I see it very similar to mine. He did a PhD in a topic which was like cultural economics or something, not something I care about or that interested in, but he dumbs it down so that I can understand it. Then goes into bits that I'm like, yeah, okay, you've gone beyond me, but I still know roughly what you're talking about. So he's got a depth of understanding, which is those smaller creators, but he's still doing enough production to get the mass audience, but he doesn't overshoot it. Yeah. And that's, I think they found nice balances. And obviously we're all on a journey. I think those writing creators need to find that balance of what purpose of communication you're actually trying to put across with this video.
Yeah, I agree.
My last point, yeah, was native communication. And the reason I say native communication is native meaning, like natural meaning, natural understanding of what it means to that person, obviously sort of doing a bit of a meta discussion here of a meaning of a word, yeah. Because everyone's meaning of what a word is going to be different. Everyone's meaning of a word is obviously going to be different, which is why obviously we do this segment. And that's part of communication, because everyone's meaning is different. So that's why I put it as the last point, because we do this section because everyone's meaning is different. And that's part of communication. If you don't talk about the different meanings of a word,
you can't get different perspectives. The perspectives are lost and nothing changes. We're all just stuck in this space of like thinking
I don't know.
We're all right. Yeah.
Exactly. World explodes is bang bang and boom. I tried to combine the episode. Yeah, I tried to combine like 3 words all in one for some stupid reason. My mouth was like, let's say all of them at the same time.
Well, bam, bam, bloom.
Exactly.
That brings us to the end of our segment around communication.
Well, we cannot communicate very well.
Communication technique was interesting, to say the least.
The purpose of that communication was to get people to laugh. So I feel like I communicated very well.
Sure, well done.
I think that's a good enough get out. Right. Hopefully our communication wasn't that poor and you come back next week. Otherwise, bye.
Hopefully our communication isn't that poor. Otherwise, bye.
Yeah. If you're laughing, tell us.
Yeah, please.
If you're laughing with us, or if you're just laughing at us.
Please tell us.
Maybe we're just laughing at each other. Maybe
Yeah,
that's what it's come to.
Yeah, pretty much. We're just doing it for ourselves now. Bye, guys.
Right. Lovely outro.